Hello everybody, it's Saturday the 16th of May 2020 and tomorrow I should have been on the way to Partisan like loads of other wargamers in the country, going to the Partisan show which is held in Newark twice a year, but because of that pesky virus none of us are going. So what happens is that those cool cats and kittens from Partisan are doing something called Partisan in the Cloud, and they're putting on a Facebook show, and they've asked me to do a Q&A for it. Now, God knows how the show's going to go, so I won't talk much about that because it might be rubbish, but this bit's going to be great anyway. So what we asked for over the last couple of days is some questions from Facebook followers on Partisan and on Wargames Illustrated to ask me. I'm Dan Falconbridge, the editor and owner of Wargames Illustrated magazine. They're going to ask some questions, or rather they've sent in some questions. Questions are going to be asked by my assistant, part-time credit controller, part-time interviewer and full-time wife, Rachel Falconbridge. So the skill with any YouTube video is knowing when to shut up, not what you actually say. So if I go on too long, Rach, do something subtle like say shut up. Right, okay, what's the first question?
So the first question is from the Partisan team.
Never heard of them.
You've very kindly given all our participants free access to the newest bite-sized version of WI. How has the magazine been adapting to the strange circumstances we find ourselves in?
Okay, right. So Wargames Illustrated Bite Size has been a weekly PDF magazine that we've been doing since the print magazine has been mothballed. So we did an April magazine, which is here. We did that magazine, that would be the last one you saw, and it also came with this free how-to booklet as well. And just after we produced that, the coronavirus lockdown came along, and that magazine did hit the shops just about, and then most of the shops closed. And since then, we've not been producing a print magazine. We've been producing a weekly PDF magazine. We've all been kept employed, all 4 Wargames Illustrated staff. There we are, oh, look, all doing our work on Skype, as in cartoon form. Me, Ian, Mark and Asan. So we've carried on going, and what we figured was if we could keep the subscribers and Prime members on board, then we could keep in full-time employment, and we could keep on paying the wages, and if we could keep our subscribers happy, which we seem to have managed to do by producing a weekly PDF version of the magazine, WI Bite Size. We seem to have kept the subscribers happy, i.e. they've not stopped subscribing, and that means we've been able to keep on going as a business. Yeah, that's how we've adapted to being in lockdown. We've switched to PDF, and we're about to switch back to print now things are easing slightly.
Okay, so Jimmy G asked, do you think you could have offered older articles to the general public for free and still kept exclusive articles to subscribers?
No. So the broader question there is, what do you give for free and what do you not give for free? Well, obviously in an ideal world we give everything for free, and it would have been nice to give old articles for free. So WI Bite Size was made up of new stuff and some things from the Wargames Illustrated archive, or vault as we call it. So all of those things came in the Bite Size package. It would be really nice to offer the Wargames Illustrated vault free to everybody. But the fact is that sales of print magazines around the world and across every different genre are going down as people look more at screens and less at printed magazines. So for any print magazine to survive, they've got to be more than just a print magazine, which means that they've got to offer something else. So what we offer as Wargames Illustrated, we offer something called WI Prime, which is a monthly subscription service for £5.99. You get to subscribe as a Prime member, and you get access to the vault, so you get all of the old issues of the magazine. You can access all the old issues, all the old articles. So because you get that as a Prime member, it's kind of not fair to give all those things away free as well. Also as a Prime member, you got loads of other stuff like £5 voucher for North Star every month, etc. So yes, of course, as always, it'd be great. The more things you can give away for free, the better. But you do have to draw a line and say, right, this is what we can give away for free, and this is what we can't.
Okay. Jason Thorne asks, on what date does your next edition come out, please?
Right. So okay. So we're going back to print, and we've got two more. No, we've just done batch size 5. We're doing batch size 6 next Friday, and then it's all we're all geared up for going back to print with the July issue. Now the July issue comes out in June, and it will be with subscribers towards the end of June. So exact date not entirely sure, but certainly towards the end of June, and it will be the July magazine.
Awesome. So following on from the first question, you have lots of contacts within the industry, and I know a few companies have moved some of their production over to emergency provision of PPE for the NHS and others. But how do you think the war games industry in general is coping with the lockdown?
Okay, yeah, so there's some companies who've been doing some great stuff with regard to helping out with the coronavirus pandemic. So I know that Army Painter have been producing hand sterilizer, and I know that Renedra have been producing ear protectors, I think, something that's certainly part of the PPE. And then Empress have done a figure which they're giving money to the NHS, I think, and we've given money to UNICEF for the sales of Bite Size magazine. Giving money away is the easy bit. Actually doing stuff and producing stuff for whether it's the NHS or any health authority is fantastic. So Army Painter and Renedra have done great work there. There's probably more, and I don't know who they are, but I'm sure there's more people doing more things out there. With regard to companies surviving, I've heard a lot of good stories. I've spoke to a lot of people, as I always do, within the industry or within the hobby, and a lot of them are doing pretty well. It's wargaming is an indoor hobby. A lot of time is spent at your painting table, painting figures, more so probably than playing games. So what people have been doing while they've been in lockdown, while they've been off work, while they've been furloughed, is they've been sat down at the desk, they've been painting figures or collecting figures, getting ready for the next game. I know quite a few companies who've been really busy during this period, and have struggled to cope, what with losing staff for various reasons. Yeah, there's been some bad stories as well. I have heard about some companies who've struggled, particularly those who've got more staff and they've struggled with what to do with regard to keeping them employed. But I've heard quite a few good things. Like I say, a lot of companies have been doing well in these conditions.
Good to hear. So Justin Powell says, do you realise there's more to war games than bolt action and flames of war? He did have a smiley face with that though.
Yeah, did he?
Yeah.
No, I didn't realise that. Right, okay. There's a broader point there, probably. So, more to bolt action and Flames of War. So, I would say we've not had a Flames of War article in the magazine for at least a year. And even then, probably over the last 5 years, we've probably had 2 Flames of War articles. Bolt action, we've done a designer's notes for Stalingrad in Bite Size. I don't think we've had another bolt action article this year. So this is a kind of perception thing. So people think that if there's something they don't particularly like, they'll assume that there's a lot of it in the magazine. So quite a long time ago, 5 years ago, I bought the magazine off Battlefront. Battlefront owned the magazine for 5 years prior to that. So say 10 years ago, Battlefront bought the magazine, and they had quite a few Flames of War articles in there. I thought they were all really good quality, so I was happy as the editor of the magazine to keep them in there. But if you didn't like Flames of War, or you were not interested in World War II, then I can appreciate why it wasn't great for you. And those things stick. I know that wargamers have very long memories. Somebody said something the other day about, I've not liked the fact that Wargames Illustrated started doing themes in the magazine. Well, we started doing themes 10 years ago, and it makes me think, hang on a minute, these people just can't, they, like I said, they've got really long memories. So Bolt Action's a massively popular game, so we will keep featuring that. We're a sort of populist magazine in many ways. I like to feature things that are popular, so we will keep featuring Bolt Action, we will keep featuring Frames and More, but just double check, because you tend to find that these things are not featured anywhere near as often as you perceive that they are.
Slightly related point from Herman Green. He asks, is it just me, or has there been more fantasy creeping into the magazine over the last few months?
Over the last few months? No, it's just you.
There hasn't. It's not me, it's Herman.
Oh, right, Herman, yeah. There's been fantasy in Wargames Illustrated forever, but I've opened the door to more fantasy because I think it's relevant. There's some things I don't think are relevant. We don't have a Cover Games Workshop. They've got their own magazine. They do their own thing. So why should we? Games Workshop fans tend to read White Dwarf. But when I go to a War Games club, and I go to a lot up and down the country, there's always fantasy games being played. Always science fiction and fantasy games being played. The club that I've been to more than any, the local club, the Lenton War Gamers, sometimes that's all they play. We've looked around the room and gone, wow, everyone's just playing fantasy this week. So although historical will always be the core to War Games Illustrated, there is also always going to be science fiction and fantasy in there to a certain extent. And I it's something that personally I'm not dead keen on historical, fantasy and sci-fi either. So it's always going to be kept down to a minimum. But it will be in there, because if it's good stuff, and if it's a new game particularly, we don't often put old fantasy stuff in. If it's a new game, we will put it in the magazine.
Okay. Paul Clark has a point to make. He says, the world of wargaming has turned into a very different place nowadays. Too much product and too many rule sets that are just copies of ideas and systems that are already out there. What was once a unique hobby for individuals is now a morass of consumer products that disappear very quickly as a new shiny comes along. Bit of a pity, really, and possibly the best of times and the worst of times. And he has a thoughtful smiley.
Oh, a thoughtful smiley.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting point. And yes, I agree with you entirely, comrade. It's just capitalism taking over. Why do you need 40 different types of toothbrushes when you could just have one really good one? But the wider point there is, why are people producing rules? People generally don't produce rules to make money. So I'm kind of joking about the capitalism fact. If you are producing a toothbrush, you're trying to make money over the other people who are producing toothbrushes. If you're producing a war game, it tends to be because you want to write a set of war games rules and you want to get it out there. There are other companies, the ones that have got a lot of employees, who rely on selling their game to make money out of it. That doesn't make it any less good. Some of the best games are produced by the bigger companies because they have proper rules writers working for them to write the games. And to write a good set of war games rules, you've got to be a proper rules writer. Just in the same way, to draw a good picture, you've got to be a good artist. But it's also an industry or hobby that is full of amateurs who are just doing things just because they want to. The point is, obviously, don't buy it. There's a lot of good stuff out there. If you're clouded by the morass of other poorer stuff out there, then it's part of the job of War Games Illustrated to point you in the direction of the good stuff. And it's part of your job as a consumer of war games to take a look at what's out there and rule it out. It's not going to change. There's always going to be loads of stuff out there. I don't know when it was, hundreds of years ago, someone invented Monopoly, and it was the best ever property trading game, so nobody bothered making another one. That's not the case with war games. People are always going to keep on bringing out more war games rules because it's fun to write them and it's cheap to produce them.
And there's probably 100 versions of Monopoly now, so...
yeah, different types of Monopoly, yeah.
Next question from Joe Salamida, and apologies, Joe, if I've pronounced that incorrectly. So, being a wargamer that has always used figures in their games, how are these paper boys or paper soldiers being viewed within the gaming hobby stroke industry? Just curious.
Okay, right, yes. So that's Peter Dennis and Hellion Books have been producing a series of books called Paper Boys or Paper Soldiers. And Peter Dennis is Wargaming's favourite illustrator. He does loads of box covers and he does fantastic art for Osprey as well. He's been producing a set of books where what you do is you open out the book and you photocopy the page and then you cut it out and you line up paper soldiers. He's actually now started working with a company in Romania called World of Fun, who are producing these same paper soldiers in plastic form. They're sort of two-dimensional, and you put them on the table and you march them about just like you would with metal or plastic figures. It's a good, quirky little thing. It's nice to have different things in the hobby, and it's great to see these on the table and to see people using them. They're not going to take over from metal models. They're not going to take over from plastic models. They're just a different thing in the hobby. Years ago, we featured a cover on Wargames Illustrated that had woodies on the cover, and it was someone doing a similar thing with wooden figures, two-dimensional wooden figures. And often the people who produce these things think they're going to be great and they're going to take over and there's no need for plastic or metal figures. That's not what Peter Dennis thinks, by the way. He just loves drawing little men, and he loves having other people cut them out and use them. They're not going to take over from anything, but it's nice to have different things in the hobby.
It is indeed. Right, so to finish, we have 3 more questions from the Partisan guys. Okay. So the first one is, it looks like it will be a while until large gatherings are allowed again in the UK. We're still hoping that our October show can go ahead, but do you think this experience will have changed shows and the hobby in the long term, and if so, how?
Right, okay. I don't think it will change shows. It might do in the short term, in so much as if it's a month after we go back, there'll be more hand sanitizer stations and things like that. In the longer term, I don't think it will change shows at all. I think, assuming coronavirus goes away completely in a few months, this time next year, shows will be exactly the same as they were. Most of the companies will be operating in exactly the same way as they were. Humans in general will fall straight back into their old routine, I think. And did you say how did it change the hobby in general?
Yeah.
Again, I don't think it'll change the hobby much in general. There may have been, it's like in society in general, people have perhaps met their neighbours a bit more and they're cohabiting as a community a bit more, which is great. If that happens within the hobby, then that's fantastic. Even if it means that people like Renedra or like Army Painter can keep on producing things for the health industry, then great. I mean, that's operating outside of the hobby. But I don't see any long-term changes to the hobby, really.
Okay, the second one is, thinking long-term, what impact do you think 3D printing will have on how we collect figures and models and play on tabletops? Will we all be buying printers and making our own, or will there always be a place for metal and plastic models?
Yes, there will always be a place for metal and plastic models. I think it was a crisis probably 6 years ago when I was first told by somebody who had a 3D printing machine that within 5 years there was not going to be any Games Workshop because everyone was going to be printing their own. Well, again, it's just another part of the hobby, which is another good thing. 3D printing model ships or I know a lot of people who make barrels and scenery and small bits of scenery using 3D printers. I've never got into it myself. It's too fiddly. I struggle enough with a printer that uses ink and paper, getting that to work, never mind a 3D one. But it's good that it's out there and it's good that people are using it. But it's not going to replace, even within a dozen years, it's not going to replace people selling and buying metal and plastic figures. It's too easy to do that.
Last question from Partisan, and indeed from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, what's the one thing that you've actually enjoyed about lockdown?
Being with my wife and family.
You had to say that, didn't
you? Within the hobby, or within Wargames Illustrated, I've really enjoyed having a chance to do the Bite Size magazine, the weekly magazine. We've thrown in new features in there that we couldn't really do in the monthly magazine. So we've had Bite Size Banter, which has just been 5 or 6 pages of little throwaway 500-word articles, for want of a better word. People going, hey, look what I've done, hey, look what I've done. And I've really enjoyed having that every week. I've also really enjoyed the series that we've done called Wargaming in a Time of Coronavirus. in which we've had people like Rich Clark, Barry Hilton, John Stallard of Warlord Games, Alan Perry have all written pieces in which they've talked about what they've been doing during lockdown. I've looked forward to receiving them and printing them every week. So, you know, producing a monthly magazine, you can get onto a bit of a roll in so much as, the next one. So breaking it up by doing a weekly PDF magazine, although it's not something we're going to do in a long time, I've really enjoyed doing that. So that's it.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, right. Thank you, everybody, for sending in your questions. I hope that I've done a decent job of answering them. And I hope you enjoy Partisan in the Cloud. See ya.